We're very fortunate today to have with us Chief Jeff Bliemeister. Chief is a new name for him as of 5 months ago. He assumed the position as Chief of Police of LPD, Lincoln Police Department, in April, I believe it was, yeah. And prior to that, for 20 years, he'd been with the Sheriff's Department. And like all of us, started off as a deputy and worked his way up to the Chief Deputy, to the Sheriff, Sheriff Wagner. In that 20 years, he had a wide range of experience that he now brings to the table as the Chief of the Lincoln Police Department. A couple of items, not to insult you, but please turn your phones off. Secondly, question and answer segment will be involved in this presentation. We have 2 microphones, as you surely saw as you came in, and we thought about passing them around, but I just ask that you go to that mic and make your comments. This is being filmed. If you make a comment where you're seated, that won't get onto the film. The microphone obviously will then carry into the filming component. And lastly, when we're done at 1 o'clock-ish, we have a little reception planned just across the hall in the Heritage Room. A little punch and cookies. So we're not going to feed you, but this little event there, and you're invited to come. And the Chief has indicated he'd love to meet with you and chat with you, see what you're studying, see what you're doing. He didn't tell me this, but I know that one of the things he's looking for is looking for young people to hire, because we see a lot of our students that go on to LPD. Some of you I see in my 101 class. Kelsey is our TA now, as you all know. Her predecessor, Giselle, was hired by Lincoln PD. And so there's hope. There's jobs out there. Chief.
Chris. Thank you, Chris, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. And as I shared with some of the staff, I know that I'm going to learn a lot more from you than you will from me during this presentation. And so when I have the opportunity to come out and speak, it's awesome for me to hear a perspective, because you are the citizens that we at the Lincoln Police Department serve. And to Chris's point, Giselle is doing a tremendous job for our agency, and we do have positions and are constantly recruiting and hopefully retaining very good and high quality employees. A little bit about myself, in that originally I'm from Northeast Nebraska. Moved here in 1990 to attend college. Unfortunately, not the University of Nebraska, but it was a great experience for me. I'm married and have 2 daughters. Lincoln is where I want to be, and I've been blessed to have the opportunities that I have had in this profession. So, some of the differences between the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office and the Lincoln Police Department. When my predecessor, Jim Pashong, announced that he was going to retire, I really had no aspirations of moving to this position. I thoroughly enjoyed my career at the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, and Sheriff Wagner had provided a lot of opportunities for me. I felt like it was an agency where I could make a difference and was just getting comfortable. I had served as the role as Chief Deputy for 4 years. I was approached by a couple different facets, as were a lot of other individuals, so don't let this, I remain very humbled by this entire experience. Asking if I would consider putting in as Chief of Police. And I really had to weigh that heavily, because I wasn't sure exactly what I was getting into. I had the opportunity to work for the Lincoln Police Department as a member of the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office from 1997 through the year 2000 in a joint narcotics task force. And I still point back to that now, 21 years into this profession, as the best experience throughout my career. Why is that? One, in my mind at the time especially, it was what a law enforcement officer was about. The work in narcotics was exciting. I felt like it made a difference in the lives of the people that we served. And it was, there was a considerable amount of volume. There was never a lack of work to do. But the most important part, and this is a life lesson for me, is that the coworkers that I had at the time were so influential. In fact, many of the coworkers that I had that were peers at the time have taken leadership roles at the Lincoln Police Department, at the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, and so they have promoted that positive influence throughout their careers. And I was fortunate to be part and have that experience. Some of the differences between the Lincoln Police Department and Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. Some I knew and I expected, some I did not. At the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, we took around 10,000 calls for service annually. We had 105 employees. You move that to the Lincoln Police Department, and we're taking 120,000 calls annually and have 463 employees. I knew that there would be a considerable difference in the amount of work and the personnel issues that are associated with that many employees. I don't think I underestimated it, but definitely it has come true in how much demand that is on the time. So that's one thing. The biggest difference, and this I think goes to a lot of what you'll learn about in many of your classes, is the differences in the expectations of the public that we serve in a county policing environment versus an urban policing environment. I greatly underestimated those expectations. The demand, when I was at the sheriff's office, if a citizen that we served would come to the sheriff's office and say, want a moment of our time, or want us to hear a concern that they would have, if that happened once, twice a month, that'd be about the average. Today, if my administrative aide, JJ Mayer, who does an outstanding job, she really has to filter that because that is all that I would do otherwise. I mean, every single day, there are citizens that come to the Lincoln Police Department and want to have an opportunity to speak with me directly. And while I love the fact that I can do that on occasion, I cannot facilitate that all the time. Otherwise, I wouldn't do anything else. That is coupled with national events. We all know that the scrutiny that law enforcement is facing nationally is heightened, and it seemingly, if we watch the mass media, becomes more relevant every single day. The people that have concerns about law enforcement nationally exist here locally too, and they should. They should have the chance to come in and express their concerns. And it's incumbent upon me and our staff at the Lincoln Police Department to make sure that we're trying the best that we can to explain the whys. It's not, we want to be as transparent as possible. And I really believe at the police department we do an outstanding job of doing that. Unless it is critical to an ongoing investigation, we are going to strive to answer the whys. It may not be me directly, but communicating it through our command staff to all those that we serve is important. So the biggest change is the expectations from a county policing environment to an urban policing environment. And after 5 months, or right at 5 months of employment, I'm still trying to seek that balance. I joke, another big change is at the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, we are legal advisors because the police get sued, we have personnel issues, are employees of the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, or excuse me, Lancaster County Attorney's Office, so Joe Kelly and crew. But the need for legal intervention to respond to Freedom of Information Act requests was again a rarity. Today, right next to my office is a legal advisor. And her job is risk management. It really is. And she wants to be able to provide timely perspective to myself and other members of the command staff that oftentimes is trying to mitigate risk. But what I have to balance that out with is that we have 463 employees that serve you, and if they're concerned or looking over their shoulder or believe that we don't support them in what their job is, then they aren't going to provide the service that's necessary. And so there's a balance there. And Tanya Peters is her name, does an outstanding job, but a big difference in that she is part of almost every major decision that comes across our desk. Some of the bigger challenges that we're facing. We spoke a little bit about body cameras. In fact, I was sharing that last weekend. How many here are 21 years old? Quite a few. How many of you been downtown at bar break? Okay. How about within myself? I went downtown bar break last weekend, 11:30 to 2:30. I was in uniform. I was with a group of city council people and other members of what's called an internal liquor commission. And we had the opportunity to just kind of walk down. I wasn't taking any enforcement action. In fact, at the Lincoln Police Department, I don't think I'd know how to write a ticket. I'd be hard-pressed to be able to do that. It's not part of what I do on a daily basis. But observing the interactions and how people look at us in uniform was a lot different than the last time that I've been down there. I don't know why that is. Is it part of the national emphasis on relations with law enforcement? It's hard to know. Our officers that are down there, only 4 of them have body cameras. So body cameras is a very hot topic in law enforcement right now. And what is my position on it? If we could provide our officers with body cameras, I would do that today. And without any hesitation. And I really believe that the majority of our officers want that technology to protect themselves from false allegations, to, more importantly, bolster or strengthen, corroborate any kind of criminal case that they are investigating, because now it's just not the officer's word against whomever they're speaking to, but it's there, audio, video recorded, for everybody to see and make their own judgments on. So we think, why not just go that way? Well, one of the biggest hurdles is cost and creating an infrastructure for an organization of, we have 324 commissioned law enforcement employees, 463 total. Our projected cost for year 1 of supplying body cameras and creating the backbone infrastructure, whether it's storage, it's all of the IT personnel to be able to maintain, because just like your cell phone, things break, go down. $750,000 year 1, and probably $500,000 every year thereafter. The Lincoln Police Department has an annual operating budget, an annual expense budget of approximately $48 million. 85% of that is personnel costs. And so we have very little room to balance all of our equipment needs, infrastructure, capital improvement projects, nothing dissimilar to any kind of other organization. But that's a lot of money. It really is. So it's a hurdle. We requested funding for a body camera program in this year's biennium. We know that it's going to cost $750,000 on year 1. They placed $50,000 into that line item. $50,000, it might buy a few body cameras and some of the storage costs associated with that. But if we don't do things correctly, we don't really want to migrate in that direction, because then we create an expectation for all of you that we have these devices and can provide the information in a timely fashion, but then we can't support it in a long-term solution. In fact, if you look at many of the large organizations nationwide who implemented body-worn camera programs with the assistance of grant funding from the federal government, They're now moving away from that because it's not sustainable. I truly believe that eventually we will get there, and I think it's imperative that we do, but it's nothing that we can jump in with both feet and do correctly. Another part of that is this. The state legislature last year passed a law that puts into place some really good things about body-worn cameras. One is that if you're going to have a program like this, you need to have policies and procedures that codify how that's going to be used. Important, should be done. And again, the legislature isn't looking at just all the larger agencies, they're looking at it throughout Nebraska. And there's some small 1-2 person departments that may not have the luxury of employees that can write and maintain all the different policies and procedures that dictate what we do. But what they also did is they placed in there retention schedules that are far more encompassing than what we have maintained our in-car camera data for. So if we move storage of video from 90 days to 180 days for every single incident, the storage costs for all of you, your parents, whomever's paying taxes here in Lincoln, goes up. Honestly, I believe that legislation, well intended, is going to adversely impact the ability of a lot of different agencies to go in that direction. Can't be something that we could fix going forward, but it's a reality today. How about you? Let's field some questions from all of you. That's something that you want to hear about, talk about. Otherwise, I can go on and on. All right.
Are there other initiatives that you're engaging with outside of body cameras to work on some of these national issues that we see boiling up?
Absolutely. At the core is legitimacy and trust, right? We, as a profession, need to build trust with those that we serve. And there's many, many parts of that. One part of it is this. And so we have to take responsibility within our organization and within our profession to do it. We need to have difficult, candid conversations regarding race relations. Oftentimes it can be taboo. There are polarizing opinions about these kind of things. But I can tell you that locally, even in my short tenure here, we have had multiple community conversations about race. And when I go and I tend and interact with many citizens that have good perspectives that need to be heard, it's done in the majority in a very constructive way. That needs to be sustained. It can't just be because there's national rhetoric about police-involved shootings. We need to make sure we continue on that path and are intentional about building those relationships. So here's a weakness of Jeff Bliemeister. Jeff Bliemeister was born and raised in West Point, Nebraska. I moved to Lincoln, Nebraska in 1990, and I attended Nebraska Wesleyan University. I was not exposed to a diverse population base. During my 20 years with the sheriff's office, many of my interactions were not with an ethnic minority or an underserved portion of the population. Why? Because that's one of the differences that I was talking about, in that if I'm painting with a stereotype, county dwellers in Lancaster County, outside the city limits of Lincoln, for the most part, are upper middle class in the socioeconomic scale, because it's expensive to live in the outlying reaches of Lancaster County. And there's very little diversity. So I recognize that's a weakness of mine. I need to have positive interaction and hear the voices of people of different backgrounds from my own. And I can tell you that I've had the opportunity to do that in the short time that I've been at the Lincoln Police Department, and I continue to build those relationships in a variety of different ways. So that's one part. We have to, as leaders, as managers of an organization, we have to look for opportunities for positive growth, positive influence, right? A few months ago, there was a Black Lives Matter rally here in Lincoln. The organizers of the Black Lives Matter rally came to the Lincoln Police Department, and we had an opportunity to sit down and hear their concerns. And we did that on a couple different occasions. And they presented me an opportunity to come out and speak. Now, I, like many of you, know that a lot of the rhetoric, especially following incidents in Dallas and Baton Rouge, may lead people to believe that there is this constant adversity between groups such as Black Lives Matter and law enforcement executives. But this was an opportunity. They offered an invite, and I felt, you know what? What a great opportunity. And it really was. We met with them. I assured them, and all of our staff did, that we wanted to provide them the opportunity to vocalize and to exercise their freedom of speech, their freedom to gather, and do it in a way that doesn't detract from the message itself. Now, from the law enforcement end, did we have to be prepared in the event that something bad happened? Because things had happened nationally that weren't, where people got hurt, property got damaged, and there was tensions. We were prepared, but we went to tremendous lengths to make sure that that did not impede upon the message that they were trying to send. The opportunity for them to vocalize what their concerns were. We kept all of those resources hidden away so they would not infringe upon those constitutional rights. And from the feedback that I've received from the event itself, anybody attend that event in here? You did? Did you go to both the Capitol and to the Hall of Justice?
Yes.
Okay. My perspective was that people express their opinions without fear of retaliation, myself included.
I agree. That's part of the reason why I came, and I wanted to thank you for facilitating that event, and I think that it went really smoothly, and I think a big part of that was because of the Lincoln Police Department and just allowing it to go as smoothly as it did.
Yeah. So that's another answer to your question. I can go on, and there's a lot of things about community policing that I'd love to talk about, and maybe we'll have a chance to do that here in a short time. Sure.
I was wondering about the negative aspects of body cameras and the impact on the use of force model.
Great question. Use of force, use of control, no matter what semantics we use, it all talks about the same thing. I'm going to start with de-escalation. De-escalation is a term that is a hot topic too in law enforcement, of how do we promote, how do we train de-escalation techniques. And I can tell you that being part of the curriculum from both the Lincoln Police Department, the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, de-escalation has been taught in our academies, in our in-service trainings for decades. It hasn't been called that. It is basically creating time, creating distance, slowing things down, how we're going to interact. Not just jumping in and using force that may be justified, but is it necessary? The national conversations have allowed us to change our policies in use of force, where we use the term de-escalation. We encourage, when de-escalation is possible, it shall be used. In our training environment, we present circumstances when we attempt to mimic real-life incidents the best that we can to reward de-escalation as a behavior. So there's positive feedback our officers receive if they utilize techniques such as time, distance, cover, slowing down the conversation, knowing exactly what is the offense that the person that I'm in front of has committed. That's two things. But then there's a third element to this, is that there have to be quality assurance measures in place where my management team proactively reviews use of force and control incidents. And we do have that. If there is force, even minimal force that is used, our officers are required to complete an additional report that is forwarded through their chain of command. So through their sergeant, through their captain, to the assistant chief, and eventually to me, where their actions are scrutinized. They're scrutinized to a high level. Why? We want to ensure that they're following our policies and procedures. We want to make sure that our training is applicable to the incidents that our officers are encountering on the street. And if they're not doing things the way that they should be, we don't necessarily want the discipline to be punitive when it doesn't have to be, but we want to create an opportunity to learn for all of us. And sometimes that becomes punitive. It really does. But that is we have an obligation to do that. We are not in the business, no matter how it's portrayed in mass media or nationally, of sweeping circumstances under the rug. Does that happen? I'd be naive to say that it doesn't. Should it happen? Absolutely not. And if it does on a consistent basis and people like me are aware of it, I should be held accountable by all of you and by the elected officials that provide me the opportunity for this job. So we want to codify it, we want to train on it, and we want to have quality assurance measures in place. And throughout that, be as transparent as possible. And then I come back to the balancing act too. We have 463 employees that want to succeed and do a good job, but they cannot be worried about their every action, because it's easy for someone like me or the media to take snippets of a situation captured on a body camera, captured on a cell phone video, and not evaluate an incident from beginning to end. That's where I need to assure our officers that it is being handled in that regard. Similar to all of you, you're innocent until proven guilty and not vice versa, right? Couple that with our officers are making decisions in a split second based on the information and experiences they have available, not with the luxury with 20/20 hindsight. The Supreme Court has recognized that over and over again. Graham versus Connor is the standard. Many of you probably learn about that in Chris's classes. It's an important ruling, and it's important for me as an administrator to recognize that we don't want to set our officers up for failure, that we have to consider what are they interacting with, what do they know, why are they taking the actions that they are. If they're culpable for wrongdoing, they will be held accountable. If it rises to the level of a criminal investigation, then so be it, because we need to protect the integrity of the profession and to continue to establish trust and legitimacy, similar to what the young lady in the back expressed. How does body cameras change that? We want our officers to consider that they are being videotaped at all occasions. Because really, they probably are. Similar to me walking downtown at the bars, there's people following me with their cell phone video on. That's fine. There's nothing illegal about that. Now, that's the easy part. Where it becomes more difficult is when someone is recording an officer and the officer perceives, or it is actually obstructing an investigation itself. And then there's a fine balancing line but often those judgments are made in a split second where those are some of the media things that you may be seeing. I'm not here to defend our profession in all circumstances. I am here to defend our profession in most circumstances, because the officers that I know and that I've met nationally they truly have service in their heart, and they won't be in this profession for very long unless they do. They don't have malfeasance or hatred or actionable discrimination as part of what they want to do every single day. But I'll share a story with you that happened not too long ago. I had a citizen come to me and sit down and express concerns. She truly believed, because she expressed this to me over and over again, that police officers with the Lincoln Police Department, none specific, but in general, don their uniform, come to work every day with the intent to kill black people. And no matter how I would try to convince her with data or otherwise, I was not going to convince her that that was not true. And so she lives with that belief in her mind. And that's something that our officers need to take into account, is that that story is real. That is a perspective that she has, and it's based upon her experiences personally, nationally. So we need to work to try to rectify and improve those relationships as we go forward. Does that kind of answer some of your question?
Sure does. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
There's been a lot of uproar around campus lately, focusing on Husker game days and underage drinking and tailgating being a very common tradition, a common game day practice. And so I was wondering what your office is doing in relation to addressing that issue.
Great question. The underage drinking in general, so the overconsumption of alcohol, despite whatever age it is a problem that has been going on probably long before many of us were alive. We have efforts in place to try to curb some of that behavior, and we work in cooperation with the University of Nebraska Police Department, the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, and Nebraska State Patrol. What are some of the things that we're doing as an individual agency to curb that? Is that we have grant-funded details, I'll call the North Bottoms detail, where we have officers assigned prior to games, every single game, that are going and trying to actively enforce, both in a uniform sense and in a plain they're not undercover, but they look like Husker fans, right? They're wearing red, the guy in red. But where our focus is on the problematic behavior. It's where people call attention to themselves, whether they are walking down the street consuming in a very open fashion alcohol. More likely, they're stumbling maybe on the sidewalk on 10th Street, and we're worried about them getting hit by the many cars that are occurring. We cannot police our way out of that issue. When there are problem households that arise, and there are, then we make an effort to focus on the problems at that house and not the person next door that's doing everything to enjoy the game day environment and to do things in a lawful way. It's not anti-alcohol for the Lincoln Police Department. It's just anti-bad behavior associated with that. We have so many concerns because of the high volume of traffic and the foot traffic that somebody's going to get hurt, that we put details such as the North Bottoms detail into place We spend a tremendous amount of resources in providing traffic direction and control by our officers. And then we partner with the University of Nebraska-Lincoln to try to provide a safe and secure environment at the stadium itself. Is there enough police when you consider the influx of 100,000 people in a very localized area? No, there's not. 99% of the people are there to enjoy the experience, just like I would be. But there is a small percentage that's not. To get a glimpse of that, if you would want, so Cornhusker Place Detox, it's called The Bridge now, provides services for law enforcement here. It provides a safe place for law enforcement to take people who have consumed way too much alcohol and are a danger to themselves. It's not jail. We take them there, they have an opportunity to sober up or to call a friend that we know is going to be responsible for them. That's a partnership that we need to maintain and continue to build. If you were at a game and had the opportunity to go into the detox facilities at the stadium, it would be an eye-opening experience for you. Hopefully none of you have been there as a customer, but it's a problem and will continue to be. Education is important. Enforcement is only one component of that particular issue. Good question.
Can't see that. Could you speak a little bit, Chief, and thanks for coming here today. Could you speak a little bit about national security for the country? We always think of Homeland Security, kind of this, whoever's out there protecting us, but local law enforcement has a tremendous role in that. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. And even more important than local law enforcement to the initiatives of national security is all of you. 324 officers in a city of 270,000 people cannot be the eyes and ears of everything that is happening. But all of you can be. So we talk about over and over again, if you see something, say something. And even if you are convincing yourself, I don't want to bother the police with this particular issue, bother the police with this particular issue. Call us. Allow us the opportunity to go out and investigate whether or not something bad is happening. We have great partnerships here at Lincoln with the FBI, with the DEA, ATF, Homeland Security. All of that we have formalized partnerships with, some of which we participate in differing task forces. Why do we do that? Because we need to make sure that there is a good line of communication locally to nationally, and vice versa. So we know what trends are happening nationally that could affect us here. And if we didn't have the opportunity to partner and have the resources available when something bad happens, and unfortunately it may, we wouldn't know how to respond. We hope we're more prepared by building those partnerships. But again, my emphasis is on it starts with all of you. And if an officer comes out and he seems like, why are you bothering us with this? Tell the officer, because I really felt like it was important. And hopefully the officer will recognize that you're trying to do a civic duty. Do our officers have bad days? Similar to everybody else? They do. May they not always come across as good as they should? Yep. But I think you'll find that the men and women with the Lincoln Police Department do a great job.
What you were just saying is kind of a good segue for my question. So you're always recruiting, what are you looking for? A lot of our students want to go into law enforcement. What can they do to make themselves good candidates for you, to make it through the long process of getting hired?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about that. And that also goes The young lady with the glasses in the back, you're talking about, can you tell me your name?
Dr. Vieska?
Dr. Vieska. Your question and Colleen's go hand in hand, right? What is something that we can do as law enforcement to build relationships, build trust? And that is have a workforce that mimics the population that we serve. And this is something that we as a profession have struggled with nationally and locally for decades, despite many different thoughts, ideas, efforts to try to rectify that. And I'll start with this. The Lincoln Police Department has 324 commissioned police officers today. Any guess how many of them are men compared to women? Percentage-wise. Anybody want to shoot a guess? 85%. Okay, she read my notes. It is. It is 85% men, 15% women. Did you read my notes?
No, I'm in education, and we have many similar issues, just vice versa. We're 85% female.
Okay.
So.
That is a problem because my daughter, 17 years old, my youngest daughter, she has grown up in a law enforcement household her entire life. When I posed the question to Ellie, is her name, what is your view or that of your friends about law enforcement? Would you consider a career as a Lincoln police officer? And almost universally their response is no, that's a man's job. No, it's not. It's not. And we need to break that stereotype because we need the perspective and the skills which are separate and unique from a diversified workforce. 15% to 85%, the math is simple, of working age adults, it's about 50-50. And that's what we are striving to do. But for a variety of reasons, we have not been successful. Now we bring that conversation to ethnicity, and we're even less diversified than where we need to be. So we need to have strategic plans in place that need to be adaptable to recruit and retain high-quality employees that represent those that we serve. And that's not exclusively females, it's not exclusively Hispanics, it's not exclusively African Americans, it's the combination thereof. But our percentages do not match. They don't. And there's so many different things that go into that, it's hard to provide a good focus. Colleen brings up, we need employees. So currently, right now, myself and the hiring panel at the Lincoln Police Department are evaluating a group of potential applicants for the class that's going to start in January. We need to know, how many are we going to hire? Well, I don't know right now because of those of you that are like local politics. There's a lot of local politics that are going right now between the city council and the mayor's office, where the mayor's office has sued the city council for not passing the tax levy that would support his budget, but they did pass their tax levy, which would support their budget, which was vetoed and not the override of the veto. And I try to stay clear of all that. But it has a practical effect on us because it makes the difference between the Lincoln Police Department hiring 6 people versus 16. So that affects all of you, right? Or anybody in here that wants to be part of this profession. And we're hopeful that there's a decision made by the court process before October 11th. However, I think that lawsuit was filed yesterday on the 20th of September, and the wheels of justice do not turn quickly. But I'm optimistic. I'll remain the glass half full. Every 6 months, we're at the Lincoln Police Department, we're hiring about 10, 12, 14, 16 employees. And all of you who are attending school, having a degree in criminal justice, have demonstrated it's not so much about the degree for us, although maybe I shouldn't say that here. It's about the propensity to learn. So it's important that you have a college education because that demonstrates to us that you are disciplined, that you can balance life and the stresses of a college environment, and know that you're going to be successful in a learning environment. Where people get hung up is the complex vetting process that we have. Our training and personnel sergeant shared with me that if we had 300 applicants this last time, 25 of those are being eliminated right off the top while she looks through their personal history statement, and they're making disclosures that are automatic disqualifiers. They've used marijuana within the last 2 years. They've used what I'll call harder narcotics within the last 5. How many in here knew that if Jeff Bliemeister, 22 years old, sprains my ankle and my parents give me a hydrocodone that they had in their cabinet to take from a leftover surgery or something like that, Jeff Bliemeister can't get hired for 5 years in Nebraska? Same as if Jeff Bliemeister is using cocaine or methamphetamine. Do I agree with it? No. But that's the statutes that we currently have to live with under. So all of you who are prepping for this process need to know that. Don't be smoking marijuana, despite where you land on the philosophical, should it be legalized, should it not? If you want to be in this profession, don't do it right now because it precludes you from getting hired. If you're tempted to use Adderall to enhance your focus so you can pass Chris's test, don't do it because it's going to preclude you from getting hired for 5 years. We are not searching for infallible beings. In fact, if someone has such a clean background, we're kind of looking at that thinking, is there any real life experience here? Because we don't want someone that is going to portray their middle class values on the people that they serve. We want somebody with an open mind, with real experiences in life, that has a propensity to learn. And if you have questions or specifics, please come and see me. Come and see our staff. And we will share with you the ins and outs. And in fact, that's probably, I'm sure that many of your criminal justice classes, hopefully we're doing a good job in law enforcement of coming and educating the students that have an interest. And if we're not, that's on us, and we need the opportunity to come out and do that. Because people will fill out this application. Lots get screened out right away. Because they're honest. Yep, I used marijuana a year ago. Okay, come back in 2 years. Then they have to be physically fit. They have to pass these standardized testings that we have, and they should. Those cannot be so difficult that it prevents female candidates from competing with male candidates. And sometimes it does. And we're constantly looking at our ability to tweak that to promote success. So you get through all that, and now you have to sit down and be interviewed by a Lincoln police officer. They complete a detailed summary based upon your personal history statement and that interview process. And then they present that to a hiring panel at the Lincoln Police Department, which consists of officers, captains. It's probably about 15 to 20 individuals that are evaluating those applicants and then making recommendations. So then myself and Assistant Chief Jackson come in, and we're provided all that information, and we look at all this stuff. All right? This time around, we're thinking we can probably easily hire, despite the budget. No, this is before the budget thing came up. We were going to hire about 14 people. But we're extending 22 conditional offers of employment to try to field that 14. Why? Because this is where the process gets hard. Now you have to go and take a polygraph, and that you're asked the questions that you fill out in that personal history statement. to make sure that you're telling the truth. So many people get hung up on the fact that I shoplifted, I vandalized something. I don't want to tell them that. I want to be a police officer, so I'm not going to disclose. Well, those things wouldn't prevent you from getting hired. Just tell us the truth, because our profession is built upon integrity. And that's what the polygraph is really trying to root out. Yeah, it's going to root out if you denied that you used a methamphetamine 3 years ago, and you really did. It's going to find that. But where the hang-up comes is people minimize or don't disclose or have a knee-jerk reaction of lying about things. And then once that happens, that's problematic for the rest of if you want to be considered as part of this profession. Because depending on how it happens, we may have to disclose that through the court process if we would ever hire you. So we tell our officers all the time, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to screw up. But when I ask you a question as a supervisor, or I make an inquiry about a use of control or use of force, your response needs to be candid and true. Because it's probably not going to it might get you in trouble internally. Maybe it gets you a day off for suspension, and then we can get you some added training so you don't make that mistake again. But when you lie, you're done. Because that's what our profession is based upon. So then you make it through the polygraph, right? You think it's clear sailing? Nope. We're going to send you for a comprehensive interview with a psychologist that has experience in law enforcement. And they're going to make a recommendation to us. And they're going to dive into your past just like the personal history statement did and just like the polygraph did. And you would be shocked at how many people that removes. Because if they tell us that you are not a suitable candidate, even if we think that you may be a suitable candidate, we have to trust their professional judgment. Seems hard, but it's not, right? It's a good screening process that prepares you for the scrutiny that you're going to receive in this profession. And it focuses on the integrity of the individuals. Because 4, 5, 6, 10 years into your career, you're going to be challenged in many different ways. And that's where your integrity must be tested. And we have to know that despite you wanting to resist the scrutiny of the administration, of the public, you need to be able to withstand that. Does that answer your question, Colleen? Okay, probably long-winded to it.
Take the prerogative of asking the last question because the time is far spent. Give us, back to a technology issue, your perspective as to the use of drones as a law enforcement officer, chief in Lincoln, Nebraska. And secondly, your take on the CCTV, the ubiquitous camera business that is so well known in London.
Great questions, Chris. Drones. Let's talk about drones. 3 weeks ago, before the first game, I was part of I went down to ride along with those involved in the North Bottoms detail. And we're circling back. I was riding with one of our captains, and flying directly above our cruiser was a drone. By FFA guidelines, or FAA guidelines, can they do that? No. But I look to my left and I look to my right, and the sidewalks are just packed with people. And you look up into the bar over at Barry's or into the housing, and there's open windows and there's people everywhere. Could I really say where this drone is being flown from? No. So it's flying above our cruiser. I guess it's really not inhibiting anything. And there's cameras. Right? This looked like a pretty nice drone. I'm sure they spent several $1,000s on it. Drones are part of our society, and they continue to be. Companies like Amazon and others are trying to incorporate that into their business models to provide efficiencies. But when we start talking about drones and law enforcement, expectation of privacy comes about. And where is that balance? I would love the ability to be able to send a drone into a tactical situation where we have the legal authority to do so, whether it's with a search warrant or with some kind of exigency clause that's going to prevent one of our officers from getting hurt. I would love to be able to use a drone to follow the Salt Creek when a student is washed away in a flooding as part of that search and rescue endeavor. My counterpart at Lincoln Fire and Rescue would love to be able to use a drone to rise up and find out exactly how they should be fighting a particular structure fire without endangering the lives of his firefighters. Seems simple, right? For some, it's a door that, when opened, is defeating some of our constitutional rights. And I have to see that side of it too. And then I have to be able to balance, is this a fight worth fighting? Today, it hasn't been a fight worth fighting. Because I also have to have the support of our administration. So basically, I take the onus on myself and our management team. We need to be able to do a better job of articulating how these will be used in a very way structured by our policies and procedures that won't infringe upon somebody's rights. And then be able to answer the whys to those that are concerned about invasion of privacy. And we're not to that point right now. Personally, do I believe it's a great tool? I do, but I fully recognize the counter issue. Closed circuit TV. There's traffic cameras all over the city of Lincoln. They are high quality. All of you can access them, right? And you can watch a particular intersection. But I'm here to tell you that they are not recorded. They're not recorded. So even if we want to, we cannot access that footage. And from a law enforcement perspective, I would love to be able to do that. One of those cameras sits at the intersection of 14th and Adams. And they record at night too. And we had a homicide in the Quick Shop at 14th and Adams. And we were searching for that suspect. But we couldn't go back and query that data. But how did we solve that particular case? The video inside the Quick Shop provided a snippet, but the person's face was covered. And it wasn't really good video. Some convenience stores, some homes have good video, some don't. But there's a neighborhood group of apartment complexes in that area that have outstanding video surveillance. And it was their cameras and our partnership with them. You know, we have built a trust with the individuals that manage those complexes to share with us that video. And it clearly showed the, without anything over this individual's face, the description in great detail, leading right up to and immediately following. That video was shared through our national networks, and our partners in Mississippi identified that individual. Without that surveillance video, that case goes unsolved because the individual culpable for the homicide of Robert Hanna was in Lincoln, Nebraska for 3 hours. 3 hours. So closed circuit TV, huge proponent. Again, we go back to balancing the privacy concerns. And we have met with the American Civil Liberties Union. We pose these same questions because While you can walk down the street and record somebody with your cell phone and that not be an invasion of somebody's privacy, the fact that traffic cameras and other cameras here on campus, I mean, I'm sure many of you know that here on campus there is a vast network of closed-circuit TV that is a great resource for law enforcement, and it really, really does contribute to your safety and security. Can it be abused? Has it been abused? It has, no doubt. Not just by law enforcement, but by many different people that have the ability to view that video. All in all, balancing, I believe that's something that we need to migrate to. It is a lower cost alternative. It's a movement to a real crime center where we can have employees monitoring this and hopefully with differing technologies be able to differentiate, and they can monitor the radio traffic and be able to pull up the traffic camera at 14th and Adams when they're getting a report of gunshots fired. So that helps us solve it, but it doesn't help us prevent it. I think people truly believe, because when you see video surveillance, it doesn't prevent all crime from happening, otherwise we'd be out of a job. I wish that we were out of a job, but we're never going to be. We're never going to be out of that job. But it makes people hesitate of what they're going to do when they know they're being recorded. And so it does have a preventative element to it. Where we need to get the national conversation to is, how can we balance that with the privacy concerns that many of you share? And make sure, if we're abusing that authority, similar to any other kind of technology, that we're held accountable. So.
Thank you very much. The time is far spent. Thank you for coming.